Welcome back, everybody, to another Toolbox Extra on the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with this week's Toolbox guest, but first, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies I used as an AD. They're all great companies. That's why they're sponsors. Take 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs. You're going to be glad you did. Then listen to our interview, and then go and visit these sponsors. Here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Probably the single best purchase I ever made as an athletic director was our indoor score table from Sideline Interactive. Go to their website and you can schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Hometown. Hometown's changing the game for schools and organizations with their suite of solutions that includes things like, digital ticketing. They're still the number one provider. How about fee-free fundraising, athletic website construction? The list goes on and on. Whether you're an AD, a principal, even a coach, Hometown's going to show you how to save time, raise money, and bring your community together. That's hometown.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and let their team help you turn your school's website into a social media destination. Whether it's a simple post to celebrate a victory or a newsletter to showcase all the great things that your program's doing, the team at Gipper is going to show you how to do it in no time. They're going to ensure all your content is made with official logos, colors, no matter who's creating it. Go to Gipper.com to get started, and don't forget to mention the podcast. We also want to say thanks to Ohio University. My assistant athletic director, along with thousands of others, got his master's through the Ohio University online program. And while they're earning their degree, get this, they also complete 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Let's say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform you're going to use every single day. Athletic eligibility and clearance, it's a game changer. Schedule management, association software, coach clearance, the list goes on and on. Go to homecampus.com, and as always, don't forget to mention the podcast. Let's say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a cool way to display your school record boards or show off your school's Hall of Fame, use one of their interactive touchscreen video consoles. You put one of their units in your gym lobby, it's going to be a magnet for kids, for coaches. How about sponsors? Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com for more information. Let's also say thank you to Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and been disappointed in the results? Those days are gone. We use Snap Raise and had great success, and so will you. Check out all of their other great platforms on the website. Go to snapraise.com. You're going to be very glad you did. Let's also say thanks to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years. As an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And the tools that Huddle provided, our coaches loved it, our kids loved it, and our parents loved it. Go to huddle.com for more information. Let's also say thanks to our good friends at Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes or your coaches, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. And as always, don't forget to mention the podcast. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another Toolbox Extra on the Educational AD Podcast. We've got, I got to say it, we got one of our favorite guests today. Regular listeners will certainly recognize the name Nathan Whitaker from his own podcast interview. If you happen to miss that, go back into our archives, take a listen. It was a great talk, some cool best practices. Also, he's become a regular for us. Nathan's background, I'm going to do some broad brushstrokes. He's a former college athlete. He worked in promotion and business. He's a speaker. He's a multi best-selling author. And oh, by the way, he has a Super Bowl ring. Hopefully, we're going to hear about some of those things. There it is. It's up for all you people watching on YouTube. Um, and he's real close to me, Gainesville, Florida guy, Nathan Whitaker. Welcome back to the Toolbox Extra.
Great, Jake. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for giving me a reason to wear the ring.
Well, you and I were talking, I think maybe about a half an hour before we started recording. This is going to be kind of a best of or a grab bag of topics of all the things that we were kicking around. Where do you want to start today? Actually, I'm going to tell you where we're going to start. How's that? Okay, I'm
All
producing
right,
this show.
sure.
Uh, it's not a secret, but Nathan has been selected as a keynote speaker for this year's NIAAA National Athletic Director and Conference coming up in Tampa. Congratulations, Nathan. Maybe talk a little bit about that. I don't want you to give your whole presentation, of course, but are you excited to be presenting to 10,000 athletic directors?
Very much so. Very much so. It's an audience I love. I love what you do here with the podcast. I love who it's reaching, and that's why it's been great to be on it so many times here with you. And I just am looking forward to being in Tampa and connecting with so many folks from around the country and then around the world as well, and having a chance to share. And as I keep telling people now, I'm giving the closing keynote for those of you who are trying to sneak out and get to the airport. Stick around. I'd love to see you. And it always makes me feel bad when I see somebody get up, even though I know maybe they've got a flight. I always assume it's about me and they're leaving because I'm speaking. So anyway, stay in your seat, stick around until we're done. I'm excited about it.
Well, again, I've had a chance, obviously, to hear you speak on this smaller scale, but your segments are always among our most highly rated, highly downloaded features. So this audience, definitely appreciates it. And if you're listening now, make plans to stick around for the end of the conference and listen to Nathan Whitaker. All right, I forced that one on you. What are we going to talk about next?
How about we talk about, it's hard. You say talk about some of the highlights, and people who know me well would say maybe I don't have any, but let's talk about this. Let's talk about identity. I did an event recently with a couple of the guys in the band Sister Hazel. For those of you who know the band Sister Hazel, we did a three-man show and they sang and I spoke, and then they spoke a little bit too. They didn't let me sing. So anyway, we got to work on that. They did give me one of those little shakers, and they said next time they're going to give it to me and they're going to drill a hole and take the little rocks out of it so I can't even make any sound. But anyway, I was trying to contribute in my own way. And one of the things we touched on, we had a whole series of things we touched on, but one of them was identity. And this idea of identity and who we are and how we view ourselves. And you and I talked just a little bit ago about how whether we're high school athletes, whether we're high school coaches, whether we're college athletes or professional or whatever, there comes a point in which we have different roles in life or different seasons of life. And sometimes it's hard for some of us to figure out what our identity is. We all of a sudden, I played baseball. You said I played a couple of sports while I was recruited to play baseball in college, and then walked on in football. So I went to Duke, and the coach who recruited me got fired before I got on campus. And so the new coach kept me around for a year, and then he was like, Nathan, you're not that good, and you can try out again, but I may cut you, and you'll have to quit football to do that and whatever. And so I looked at it cost benefit and thought, all right, let me just stick with football. So I only played baseball for a year. And so it really was this transition for me in how I viewed myself. Was I a failure? Was I still an athlete? Was I still a baseball player? What was I, and did it ultimately matter? And I think a lot of us have that in different ways, whether it's a season of life or a family situation what am I now? Am I still a good parent? Am I still what am I? And so I think it's important to have something, some sort of core value, something we're rooted to that we can still kind of stay grounded in. And I had a conversation the other day with a woman. She was a fellow Duke grad. I knew her from college, and she does public relations. And I said, great, love public relations. And I never know what I'm doing as far as branding and whatever. And do I really need a personal brand? And she said, you don't want to work with me because I do crisis management. She said, and then I try to help you out of that. But she said, I do crisis management. When something goes really off the rails, I come in and you don't want to deal with it. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, but you shouldn't need to. And she said, anybody who stays grounded, she said, what we always find is if they lose sight of their core values, if they lose sight of who they are as a company, as an institution, as a person, whatever it may be, and whatever they were doing, then they start to think, you know what, to stay here or to get to where I want to go next, I need to cut this corner. I need to hide this sales report or whatever, profit and loss statement, whatever it is. I need to start doing things. And she said, that's always when it goes off the rails, is when we lose sight of our core values, who we are. And that's where we have to take people and say, okay, we got to go back to somewhere where you were and you were comfortable with. We got to get back to that. And then let's start to move forward from there. I think it's true for all of us as well. When, we got into coaching, we got into being athletic directors, we got into writing books or whatever for a reason. And what is that reason? And sometimes it can get really hard, I'm sure. I know it is for me at times. You get caught in the weeds and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got budget issues and complaining coaches. And if another parent calls me about whatever, so I'm sure that things can get crazy. But at the end of the day, just trying to strip it back and say, wait a minute, who am I? Why did I get into this? What do I stand for? All right, now what am I going to do in this moment? So I think that's really important. I know I kind of monologued there, and I didn't mean to do
No.
that, but I think it's an important topic.
Oh no, absolutely. And again, you and I were, or I was, kind of whining before we started recording about, it just seems to be a thing now, more so of a thing, with high school student athletes, and I'm sure with college student athletes that, when that playing career is ended, maybe it's after your sophomore season, maybe it's,
Mm.
when you're graduating, moving on to college, that there just seems to be, it's much more of a thing. And I love how you talked about the way to avoid it is staying aware of and staying true to your core values. I'm going to ask you this question. Now, for listeners, if you're not familiar with Nathan as an author, he's got a ton of books out there. Probably, I'll start right at the top. Your series that you've done, it seems like it's ongoing, with Tony Dungy, runaway bestseller book. You had a professional and continue to have a personal relationship. Families know each other, kids know each other. Um, in your time working with Tony Dungy, when he was the head coach, you were in the front office. Seems like he's probably one of the least likely guys to get away from his core values. So here's my question. Did you ever see that happen or start to happen with Tony Dungy?
I did not. This would be a great moment. This would totally go viral, right? If I had a good story of here's the time I saw it. No, but I did. I don't. But let me give you two examples of things. So I get to the Buccaneers. I'd worked for the Jacksonville Jaguars for 3 years. Then I get to Tampa Bay in January of 2001. And Herm Edwards had just left to go become the head coach of the Jets. And so they hired a young coach from the University of Cincinnati who was right around the corner from me, Mike Tomlin. And so we're brand new with the Bucks at the same time. And all of a sudden we get almost every week, it felt like in the paper, would Tony Dungy be fired? Would the Bucks let him finish the season? How far did the Bucks have to go for Tony to keep his job? And here I'm thinking, I've just bought a house. I've just moved here in part because this seemed like a stable franchise and I could be here a long time working in the front office, doing salary cap stuff, all these things. And all of a sudden, my wife's saying, do we need to put the house back on the market? And so all year, we're all going through this. And we started the season, we won 3 of our first 7. So we have a losing record to start the year. We're almost halfway through the year and we have a losing record. And so the articles are still ongoing. So everybody's stressed and we're trying to figure out what we're going to do next. Everybody's stressed except for one person, Tony. And he just was like this all year. So we get to December, late in the season, we're playing better. We're going to sneak into the playoffs. We got in as wild card, lost the first game in the wild card round. Tony got fired 2 days after that. But we're getting close to that point. We're almost to the playoffs, and Tony and I were just together in the locker room at one point. And I said, Tony, I really appreciate just the way you've been, your witness in light of the circus that's gone on. And he just said, Nathan, I think that there are times when people just want to see how to behave in times of crisis, that God wants us to be able to show that there's just a certain way we're going to behave no matter what happens to us. And he was always like that it was just this unflappable, not that he didn't have concerns, not that he didn't have, but he stayed grounded in, I didn't get into coaching to worry about was I in Tampa or was I. So fast forward, so he gets fired. John Gruden comes in, spend 2 years with John, win a Super Bowl. Then they fired the rest of us. John did, and the new folks. So anyway, so I'm trying to find a new job. I end up writing a book with Tony. And as we're going through some of the facts and figures and things that had happened in Tony's life to write his memoir, this is 2007. So 5 years after he was fired. I asked Tony about that firing. I said, let's talk about that. Let's dig into that a little more. Because here you told me this in the locker room, but then a month later you get fired. I said, how'd you get over the bitterness? And he said, he looked at me and he was genuinely puzzled. And he looked at me and he said, bitterness. And I said, well, right. I mean, you'd come down and you built an organization, you're treating people the right way, and you're involved in the schools and you're winning, and you've turned around this terrible franchise and gotten them to the playoffs, and then you get fired. I mean, so what did you do with that bitterness? And he said, Nathan, I wasn't bitter. I had a different mission. I was a football coach. And he said, for me, it's my job to coach and it's God's job to tell me where. And so if this door's closed, then I'm going to go find another door and go through it. And I said, well, Tony, I've been bitter on your behalf and mine for 5 years. He said, okay, well, you can let it go. Today, you can let go of that bitterness. But that's kind of how he would go back to his faith, to what mattered. Was he reaching people? Was he involved in their lives? Why was he coaching? What was he doing? And he always kind of came back to that. And so he's still done that. You know, a lot of times we talk about identity in terms of role and the like, and we all have different roles at different times. And I'm going to date myself, but when I was younger, Robert Fulghum, I think is how I always thought it was Fulghum, but I think it's Fulghum, wrote those books, Everything I Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And in one of those, he talked about how he had a business card printed and all it said was like Robert Fulghum or something, but it had no other identifying information. And he said, you know, some days I'm a father and some days I'm a husband and some days I'm a coworker and some days I'm helping my neighbor weed their yard. And he said, I just don't want to be pigeonholed by somebody going, who are you? What do you do? And I pull out my business card and go, this is who I am. And he said, my identity is going to be kind of how I choose to navigate life. And my role that day may be different than my role another day, but that doesn't mean that who I am inside changes. And I thought that was really interesting. And in some ways, Tony is like that in that he knows where his grounding is and he knows what his foundation is. And he keeps checking back in with that, even as things change around him. So I didn't have any examples to the contrary, which I'm sorry, we're not going viral with that.
No, well, and that certainly was not my intent. And remember,
No,
I prefaced it by saying he seemed like the least likely guy to
absolutely.
stray from his core values. And from a strictly football standpoint, things kind of worked out for him at his next stop, don't you think?
They did. They did.
And
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and give you some props here too. Not that you need it. You told me that when you were told your services were no longer required by Tampa, there was another offer from another team, right?
Yes, I had a chance to go to Seattle and Atlanta, and yes, I could have continued. But my wife and I decided that we had a different journey.
Yeah, you had a
And
different
then what was
mission.
interesting, so just I'm sorry.
You said you had a different mission.
I did. I did. And what was interesting though, and I think is illustrative here, is that I got fired by the Bucks and we decided that we talked to those other teams, but then decided, no, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to do other things. And Tony didn't want to write a book. And so it went from like I got fired and it's kind of a badge of honor in some ways, especially in the NFL when you get fired. And now I'm going to pursue this other thing. Well, that wasn't working out because Tony wasn't sure that anybody wanted to read about him. So he's like, I don't think I need a memoir. So I was trying to figure it out and talk him into it. And years were passing. And so I went from my wife telling people, oh yeah, Nathan's not with the Bucks anymore. He's writing a book and whatever. And I actually pulled her aside one time and I said, don't, you got to quit telling people that because it's not working out. And then I found myself when they would talk about, oh, so you got fired. And I'm like, well, really it was kind of a mutual, and it wasn't mutual at all, right? They walked in and said, please don't ever come in here again. But it's funny how over time, even when I thought I kind of was grounded in what gave me value and purpose, and it wasn't anything I did or a paycheck or whatever, it was who I was as a person. And and then all of a sudden over time, kind of you get chipped away at a little bit and over time. And so then I was like embarrassed that I didn't have a job. And then I was embarrassed that I was trying to write this book. And then all of a sudden it's like I'm trying to avoid people. because I was struggling with my identity and what it meant. And so, you can look back and go, yeah, I was unemployed and whatever. But when you're in the moment, sometimes it's not so easy. And maybe I should do things better. But I feel like I'm still a work in progress and I'm learning as I go. It's not always easy to hang on to some of these lessons.
Boy, that's why we have you on the show for sharing those types of anecdotes. Great stuff. I'll get you out of here on this one, talking about identity. And again, for listeners, we're recording this on October 8th. This past weekend, Arizona Cardinals, playing a football game. These are professionals. It's not high school kids. It's not college kids. Um, Running back for Arizona breaks through the line, almost a 70-yard run for a touchdown, but he fumbles the ball on the 1 yard line. I still remember as a coach talking to our kids, run out of the back of the end zone, then give the ball to the official. It seems like it's every week these guys are doing this.
Mhm.
But anyway, now the video on the sideline between him and the head coach. Head coach obviously upset, verbally letting his player have it, and the video that's now surfaced, he's actually, tapping pretty darn vigorously on the player's chest plate. Player handled it. I guess you could say he took it like a man. Didn't retaliate verbally or physically, which would have been a much worse. The coach, obviously, in hindsight, recognized, that's not who I am, and publicly apologized privately to the player. The talking heads on TV seem to think, the players at least, that hey, that's water under the bridge. They're going to move forward. You've been there, college athlete. You've been there, professional football. What's kind of your take on that situation? And I guess talking about identity, the coach was saying that's not who I am. I believe him, but
Mhm.
is that the way? Did he handle it in the right way? How's that?
Yeah. Well, I think, so I don't know any of the people involved personally. So just that so all I'm coming at it like you are from the outside. But I do think that, I'm willing to take it at face value that that's not who he is. That's not how he wants to be perceived in the locker room or outside of it. And I think there are a lot of times when a lot of us have moments where we kind of do things that we wish we hadn't. And so to the extent that he's owning it, he's living up to it, the Cardinals, I believe, or the NFL, I think the Cardinals fined him.
Cardinals find him, yeah, 100K.
Cardinals find him. And I get it, right? Really upset fumbling, as he goes into the end zone. And even in watching the replay, I wasn't entirely certain he fumbled it. But it was
It
really
was
close.
close. It was
It
close.
was, it was really close. And like you said, oh, that we all could be Barry Sanders and just score and then go hand the ball to the ref. Then you never have to worry about it, or run out of the back of the end zone. But I do think there's something to be said for owning it, and I have a feeling that things will be fine in the Cardinals locker room going forward. I heard the basketball coach at the University of South Carolina talking to him about a year ago, and Lamont Paris, and he said at the end of the day, he said as a leader, as a coach, whatever it is, I don't need to be liked. And so I don't need to worry about whether or not my players like me. He said, but at the end of the day, I do need them to trust me. I need them to trust me that what I say, they're going to do it. They're going to run the plays I want. They're going to understand that I'm putting them in or not putting them in or whatever. I need them to trust me. And he said, I can't point to a lot of situations in life where I trust somebody I don't like. So being liked can't be my end goal. But at the end of the day, I need to conduct myself in a way that allows people to trust me. And does that mean that I can just behave however I feel like in the moment with my emotions? Well, probably no. And I probably need to understand that there are certain things I'm not going to do, I don't want to do because I want to relate to people. I want them to understand I'm leading for their benefit. I'm leading for all of our benefits. And there's certain ways I'm going to do things. And if I don't, if I cross the line, if I do something wrong, then I need to own it so that they understand, okay, he really does mean what he's saying and he owns this. And I don't know about you, but I played, I had coaches who would go and they'd, lead you in a Bible study and then they'd dog cuss you on the field. And you're like, okay, who am I supposed to believe here? Are you this guy? Or are you this guy? And so at least here, you had a moment. He said, hey, that's not who I wanted to be. And I'm gonna fix that. So anyway, So I'm inclined to think that everything's going to work out okay. Although the Cardinals, boy, they seem to be snake bit. Every year you think, all right, here they're finally moving, then they lose a game like this where they're up by however many points, and so who knows? But hopefully at least they get it all worked out on some level.
Yeah. Yeah. And they, even with the fumble, the lost, they were still ahead at that point. So, yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I love, thanks for sharing that, anecdote with the basketball coach about, that, okay, my goal is not to be liked. My goal is to be trusted, but hey, it makes it easier.
Hmm.
I remember, early in my career, probably first 4 or 5 years, I had an athletic director tell me, Jake, they don't have to like you, but it helps. Uh, it's true. Uh,
Hmm.
Nathan, thanks for doing this grab bag of topics today. Just great stuff. If one of our listeners wants to find out more, maybe even bring you to their school or organization to speak to their team or their people, what's the best way that they can connect with Nathan Whitaker?
I've got a website. My wife calls it my shrine to me, but it's nathanwhitaker.com. And if you go there, there's a contact form and other information, that and social media. I'd love to chat.
Okay.
And otherwise, I'll see you all in December in Tampa.
Absolutely. Make plans to see Nathan Whitaker live in Tampa. Okay. Nathan, thanks as always for sharing with our listeners. All the best in the coming months. And we are definitely going to get together and have a beverage or two in Tampa.
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
For our listeners, we hope you're looking forward to the next episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Until then, we upload all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do Toolbox Extra just about every week and just about every day. We try to share stories along with some best practices from the world of athletics. So please come back and join us again on the next edition of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Wow, always a great time with Nathan Whitaker. Make sure you check out his website. Bring him to your school. Tremendous speaker. Speaking of tremendous, let's talk about our sponsors one more time. These are all companies that I used as an AD. If you're not using them, you should at least check them out. You're going to be glad you did. Let's say thanks to Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Tables and Video Boards. Home Campus, it's the official sports administration platform for a number of states and thousands of athletic directors. Go to homecampus.com. Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Hometown, go to hometown.com. Huddle, as a football coach, I used Huddle. As an AD, we were a Huddle school. Go to huddle.com. SnapRaise, fundraising and more. Go to snapraise.com. Athletic surveys by LifeTrack. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Vital Signs Wall of Fame. You'll find them at vitalsignswalloffame.com. And Gipper. Turn your school into a Gipper school. Go to gipper.com for more information. Thanks as always. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.